Hello, good evening, and thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Burman. As you can see, it's a little bit of a different one here as we are live from Capitol Hill. Just hours from now, President Trump will arrive for the first State of the Union address of his second term. The president returning to this chamber tonight to deliver his State of the Union at a time where there are significant questions, both at home and abroad, for the economy, affordability, immigration, tariffs, healthcare, you name it. And then when you go abroad, the big issues of war and peace. And tonight, not just about the state of our union, it's also about the direction and the future of this country. One of the most important issues to voters, the economy, whether you're left, right, independent, whatever. Probably the economy is number one for you. And President Trump telling me on the record today that he'll call for new tax cuts on the personal and corporate level. The president also telling myself and other network anchors and cable news anchors who met with him earlier today that the country is about to have, as he sees it, the best 3 years economically in the history of this country. And he says it's already started. The president also breaking some news on Iran today, saying that the country wants to make a deal, Iran does, more than the U.S., but they refuse to say the sacred phrase, "We won't build nuclear weapons." Just some of the stage tonight. Live coverage throughout the hour. Some of what we do best here on the Hill. You'll hear from both sides of the aisle. But first, to our Kelly Meyer, live on the North Lawn over there at 1600. The president gearing up, getting ready for the final touches of that speech before he heads on over here about 2.5 hours from now, Kelly.
Yeah, he'll be heading your way soon there, Blake. And we are expecting this to be a long night. President Trump saying it's going to be a long speech because he says he has a lot to talk about. So I'm expecting to see, as you mentioned, Blake, the economy be front and center tonight. We've been seeing the president really focusing on that here at the White House. And tonight he'll make his case to the American people on what he's going to do to make life more affordable, from housing to prescription drugs to gas prices. Here's how Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, previewed the speech earlier today.
Will lay out the case for why he and Republicans are better suited to continue tackling the affordability crisis that was created by the Biden administration and Democrats on Capitol Hill. And over the past year, there has been tremendous progress to move the ball forward toward attaining the level of economic prosperity we had under President Trump's first term.
Another big topic tonight, Blake, is Iran. And I know he told you that Iran wants a deal more than he does, but they have to assure him that they won't build a nuclear weapon. We've been tracking more and more military hardware heading to the Middle East ahead of this speech tonight. But overall, it seems this speech will be more focused on domestic issues, especially in this midterm year. And following this speech, a White House official tells me President Trump will head to Texas to tout energy costs. And that comes just days before the state's Republican primary for the Senate in the state. Blake.
Yep, a big one there, but the focus on this building tonight. Kelly Meyer, live for us over at the White House. Kelly, thank you. Look who's here with me now, former chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, Ronna McDaniel, and Bill Salmon, Senior Vice President of Editorial Content for The Hill and News Nation. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Look at this.
You got the spot.
Look at
We've
the
got the
sunset.
spot here.
When we walked over here, it felt like 20. It feels like 50 now.
It's
though.
very civilized right now.
I'm
loving
Michigan
it.
girl. I'm fine.
I'm
but
from
it's
Ohio.
Beautiful.
There it is.
Right.
They call this good hitting weather in October in Ann Arbor. So how about the president tonight and what he needs to do, Ronna? What do you think Donald Trump, when he gets in here and he gets into the chamber and he feels the energy and all that? Obviously, the speech is prepared, but what do you want to hear from him this evening?
Well, first of all, this is his atmosphere. Right? He's an entertainer. He understands he's got an audience at home. He wants to talk to them about what he's done and what he's going to do. I think he's going to start with introducing the U.S. men's hockey team.
Okay.
Put the Democrats in a tough spot. How do you not cheer for that? Something that's united our country. And then he's going to go on specifically about domestic policy. And I think we all know cost of living is top of mind for voters. He's going to talk about lower gas prices, mortgages being lower, the lowest since 2022, and these tax cuts that he's previewed a little bit earlier on today.
The bottom line for the president right now, Bill, a year into term two, we can show the numbers if we have them, is a year ago, the polling was in his favor. And tonight it's not. And so it's a little bit of a sales job on not only himself and his administration, but also trying to tell America, go vote for the Republican side of the aisle come November.
That's exactly it. The president will utter perhaps 10,000 words tonight, and I don't know whether he will utter the word midterms, but in my mind, at least politically, from his perspective and from the Republicans' perspective, that's what the goal of tonight's speech is. The Republicans, you're right. Back in August, President Trump was literally, you could make the argument that you get tired of winning. Everything was breaking his way. He's had a rougher patch since then. He needs to get his mojo back if he's going to have a shot at mitigating what's looking like a very rough midterm season coming up. Republicans are almost in a defensive crouch right now, and I think Trump's got to figure out a way to go back on the offensive, and we can maybe win this thing or at least mitigate some of our losses.
What about the Democratic side of the aisle? Because a lot of Democrats aren't going to be here this evening. Others are going to be in some sort of a silent protest. You hear from Abigail Spanberger, the governor of Virginia, later. What about that side of the aisle?
I think there's a lot of material they can go after. The challenge for them is going to be knowing which things to attack him on and knowing which things not to attack. You talked about the hockey team. I don't know how much time the Democrats spent this week complaining about Kash Patel celebrating with the men's hockey team at the Olympics, and you could make the argument about, well, the decorum or whatever, but it's complicated to make a political argument when you're cheering for your home team and you've got this historic thing. So pick the right battle where you can get the most mileage out of it.
Ronna, real quick, what should Trump not say tonight?
I don't know if I'm going to go there because I think there's a lot that he's got on his mind. I think he's going to talk about tariffs. I do think he talks about the midterms. I think he understands what's at stake. I think he's creating a blueprint for Republicans to run on when he talks about the economy. And I think the Democrats have picked the worst possible rebuttal in Abigail Spanberger. She ran as a moderate, and what she has done in Virginia and proposed once she got in office, taxed nail salons, tax everything under the sun is going to be taxed under Abigail Spanberger. She's done a complete 180 and re-embraced the progressive left. They've learned nothing.
Some of the rebuttal to the rebuttal, I guess, that we'll probably hear, just some of what we see later this evening. Ronna, Bill, thank you so much. See you back later in the hour. Appreciate it. Joining us now is the Republican Senator Ted Budd. Tar Heel State. Senator Budd is on both the economic and small business committees. He will be in the room, of course, for the State of the Union address. Senator, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. Big night. You're in your office. You'll make the short walk over here. Let me show you some of the numbers because this is the bottom line for the president. You got inflation down, but unemployment up. You got mortgage rates down, but hourly wages up. And GDP, soft at 2.2%. So what do you want to hear from the president tonight?
One of the big challenges of Trump's first term was that they had so many wins, they didn't know how to package it. So I think he has learned how to package it. He's going to be talking. I think it's a long speech tonight. That's fine because he has a long list of accomplishments. He's going to be doubling down on the economy. He's going to be talking about affordability. And if you remember his promises in 2024, he ran on affordability, but it really wasn't until Mondami that people started calling it that. But all of his policies are about putting more money in the pockets of American people. So that's what he's going to be talking about. But having money in your pocket doesn't matter unless you're safe. Safe from our southern border, safe overseas as
Senator, well. Are you comfortable, though, having him run on the economy? For example, I'm looking in North Carolina when there's a loss of 7,200 manufacturing jobs alone this year in your state.
A lot of these jobs are being replaced, and every manufacturing job that you lose is a challenge, but look at the other jobs that are coming in. Even with the mass advancement of AI, we're seeing jobs that are paid more. We're seeing more people come to our state. We're seeing, unbelievable growth in our state. We're seeing Western North Carolina come back and rebuild, largely thanks to President Trump sending more money even to be announced very soon for Western North Carolina. So for our state, I think he's been great. You've had fentanyl deaths down 56%. That's kids who are coming home to their parents that may have died if President Trump wasn't in office. So lives are saved, emergencies have been prevented, we're more secure than we've ever been, and I'm grateful to President Trump. I look forward to seeing how he messages it tonight, but I think we're headed in a good direction. And let's remember, nobody's voting right now. We're voting in October and November. We're voting for primaries, and we'll sift through that. But I like where we're headed towards November.
You mentioned AI, Senator. One of the things that I learned from the White House today, being over there, is that the president is going to announce tonight, essentially, this idea of what's being the big data centers. And there's going to be a big announcement on making sure that the companies, the massive companies, pay for the electrical costs and the electric prices and all that. I'm looking at what's going on in your state, Chatham County, which is near Raleigh, and Gates County in the northwest part of the state. They put moratoriums on build-outs there of data centers. Richmond County in the south is offering incentives. And the reason why we're talking about this, I mean, look, the president's going to bring it up tonight in the State of the Union address, is you're having this big debate. It's playing out in your home state. Where do you side? Do you side with Chatham County or Gates County, or do you side with the folks who say build, build, build?
Look, I met with Chatham County today. That's their decision. Excuse me. They have built so many data farms there. They have so much going in Chatham County, so much growth. It's really mix and match. Because if you look at Richmond County, I mean, that's where Amazon's coming. And if you look at some others, they're already power constrained. But I think it's up to each county, and we're paying the price right now in our country and even in North Carolina from this green energy debacle that we've gone through. It's raised the cost of energy for the American family. President Trump's rolling that back. We love our environment. We want it safe. We want it clean. But the green agenda really just raised the price for American people and made things less reliable. So I think that's it. We got to invest in infrastructure. And these companies, it's fine if they pay for their power and bring their own power when they build these data centers. Okay. That's not a bad idea, because there may not be enough because of the green agenda.
Some of what the president is going to talk about tonight, Ted Budd, Republican down there in North Carolina. I say down there in North Carolina, but just down the road from us here tonight here in Washington. Senator, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Well, President Trump telling me today that Iran wants to make a deal, essentially more than he does. But the issue here is around the whole concept of, will Iran say no nuclear weapons? Will they come out and just say, you know what, no more nuke building? Plus, in a few minutes, I'm going to be joined by, here on the balcony, two lawmakers, Republican and Democrat. It's what we do here on the Hill, right? I want you to hear from both sides of the aisle. One of them actually plans on boycotting tonight's State of the Union address. Where do they stand as well on this issue of Iran? The warships on the move and the president making the comment today. I'm Blake Burman. Special edition of The Hill on a beautiful night in Washington when you return in Florida.
President Trump's first option is always diplomacy, but as he has shown, he is willing to use the lethal force of the United States military if necessary.
That, of course, the press secretary Caroline Leavitt earlier this morning as the commander-in-chief prepares to deliver his State of the Union address just about 2.5 hours from now, with the world watching. The leader of the free world potentially could address Iran. The president telling me and a group of news anchors today at a lunch over at the White House that Iran wants to make a deal, but they, quote, won't say the sacred phrase, we won't build nuclear weapons, end quote. With 40,000 American service members within striking distance of Iran tonight, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and the CIA Director, John Radcliffe, briefing a select group of lawmakers today on the most sensitive intelligence ahead of tonight's speech. With us here now on the Hill, Democratic Congressman from California, Ami Bera, sits on the House Select Committee on Intelligence and the Foreign Affairs Committee, not attending the speech tonight. We'll get to that in a second. And Indiana Republican Congressman Marlin Stutzman, his district is a beneficiary of the president's desire to build the Golden Dome. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us here tonight. Congressman, first off, let's note, a Democrat and a Republican sitting here and willing and wanting to do this together. So thank you both.
Always good.
Yes, it is.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
And a handshake, too. This is a big decision before the president. How do you view this?
You know, I hope the president talks about his plans around Iran, what the intentions are. Is this about regime change? Is this about making sure Iran doesn't have nuclear capabilities? I think all of us in a bipartisan way don't want to see a nuclear-armed Iran, because that would just set up a nuclear arms race, destabilize the region. So we support the actions to make sure Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. If we're going to go to war, though, this is going to be a lot more complicated than Venezuela. I think our military executed a flawless operation there. This will be much more difficult. And I think if that's where we're going, he's got to prepare the American people for what could be a prolonged issue. But he also, my belief is he's got to come to Congress, brief the relevant committees on this. I'm glad that, probably the Gang of Eight had a briefing today. But we've got to be involved here.
So here was Chuck Schumer, the top Democrat in the Senate earlier today, Congressman, and then we'll pick it up from there.
This is serious, and the administration has to make its case to the American people.
So you heard some of that there from your colleague here. One of the questions is, for the Republican side of the aisle, how is this America first? How does that square with that?
Yeah.
To that question, you would say what?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that President Trump, he does have a tough decision. I mean, but Iran has continually been a thorn, not only in our side, but in the Middle East, in the regional, the side of the region in that area. And so I think that the fact that it is about security from a national level, but also with our allies, my hope is that President Trump is building an international coalition. I do hope that we see this regime toppled. There's been too many Iranian people that have died in hopes for a regime change. These people have put up with so much brutality and so much oppression that this is a moment in time. We had this back in 2014 when the Arab Spring was creeping up. We thought that might be the tipping point. So these moments don't come along very often. So I hope that it happens now. And I know that President Trump is a strong leader that will put our country first, but making sure that our men and women are safe if they do something.
Congressman, you are not attending tonight.
I'm not.
You are one of a group of Democrats. Do you know the final number, give or take, how many it might be?
I hear it's about 70 right now.
70?
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
I'm still working on it.
Okay.
I'm working on it.
Look, you come on the show all the time,
Yeah.
and you will often say, I applaud President Trump and Republicans for whatever it may be. So you're not an extremist, right, on your side of the aisle, but you are choosing to not go tonight. How do you justify that? Why? This is an American tradition.
It's not an easy decision. Okay. I respect the office of the presidency, but I've also seen in recent weeks and really over the past 12 months a combative president. Certainly combative with the Democratic Party. I saw the antics that our side did in the last State of the Union. I think it's going to be worse tonight. I don't think that's the right forum for protests to take place. I've chosen not to go because I do think the president is going to try to goad Democrats into, making some public protests here. And again, I don't think it's the right venue. I also think he's got to work more closely with Congress.
So, look, you guys are being friendly and are friendly, and I think there's probably some folks at home who are watching this and are like, why can't Congress be more like this, be more normal, just like be humans, right? And sit here and talk to each other. What exactly do you think Democrats and Republicans can work on, or is the reality here, Congressman Stutzman, November's around the corner, and the answer is nothing?
Well, actually, just a couple of weeks ago, we passed a big housing package out of the House of Representatives, and there were only 9 members that voted against it. So, housing is a big issue. President Trump has been talking about housing and affordability for the American people, making sure we protect the American dream. That was a bill that came out of financial services that I sit on. We did pass a big package.
Does that get to the finish line? Because, not to get too into the weeds, but the Senate has some issues. The president wants his own items involved. Does that end up getting to his desk?
I hope so. Of course, between the House and the Senate, there's always differences of opinion. We often say that the Senate is really the problem.
Right.
But no, I think that we all realize that housing is a real issue, that Republicans and Democrats, we showed that we could do it in the House of Representatives. Hopefully they'll do it in the Senate.
Look, I hope the president talks about affordability today. I hope he sticks to the script and the teleprompter. We've all got constituents that can't afford their rent, their mortgage. It's harder to put food on their table, pay for their health insurance benefits. If we actually met in the center, we could actually solve a lot of these issues. And, it's what the public wants us to do.
Yeah. All right. So. We'll leave it there. Congressman Barrett.
Right, thank
you, sir. Congressman Stutzman with us tonight. And
Yeah.
again, Democrat, Republican, sitting down here on the Hill with a handshake to boot. All right. Just a few hours from now, in the building behind me, President Trump will come face to face with the Supreme Court. maybe those justices that ruled against his tariffs. Up next, I'll speak with the top Republican senator who wasn't thrilled about how all this played out, what he's now saying about the ruling and the fallout. Welcome to a big night in Washington as our coverage continues. All right, welcome back here live tonight, Capitol Hill. We're in just about 2.5 hours from now. President Trump will deliver his State of the Union address. First time he's doing it in the second term. Of course, he did it a bunch in the first term. He'll come face to face with the Supreme Court justices as well. They are invited to attend. We'll see actually how many show up. And of course, those are the folks who just struck down, many of them at least, a key portion of the president's trade agenda, struck down the tariffs. We will speak to Republican Senator Ron Johnson in just a few minutes. But first, to the Democratic Congressman of Illinois, Brad Schneider, member of the House Ways and Means Committee, bringing a guest tonight who is a CEO of a small business who is, of course, impacted by the decision here. Congressman, thanks for being with us tonight.
Glad to be here.
Big night, big night. Obviously, the Supreme Court made its decision, but the reality is that President Trump says, I'm going forward. Mike Johnson has said he doesn't think really anything can pass here. So as a member of Congress, is it just sort of done, settled? How do you accept that?
Absolutely not. First of all, and this is what Justice Gorsuch said in his opinion. Congress is who the Constitution is to the organization the Constitution said has the power to tax, whether it's tariffs or whatever type of tax, is Congress, it's not the president. So it's clear. You mentioned my guest. I'm not just someone who was affected by the tariffs. My guest is the owner of Learning Resources, the company that sued and is the named plaintiff in the case that was decided last week on the tariffs. Because these tariffs are a tax on the American people, on American small businesses. They are, as the Supreme Court ruled, they are illegal, and the Congress, and in particular Speaker, needs to stand up, get a spine, and say we are the legislative branch.
Here's what I've noticed, because the governor in your state, J.B. Pritzker, he said, cut the check, President Trump, talking about the refund. Yeah. Donald Trump last year was saying, you know what, his argument, the tariffs are working so well that we are going to be able to give you a refund. Probably would have happened ahead of the midterms. Now the dynamic has changed, has it not? It's because the Democrats are now saying, okay, we see you, cut the check.
Well, let's talk about how well, quote unquote, well the tariffs are working. In 2024, the trade deficit was $904 billion. 2025, it went down $2 billion, 0.3%. But that's offset, that's not just the goods and services, it's both. Goods and services. If you look at the goods, what's tariffed, the trade imbalance went up by 2.5%.
Why is inflation dropping?
Inflation has been dropping for years. We saw a spike in inflation for a lot of reasons, particularly coming out of the COVID pandemic. Inflation is still at 2.4%, higher than we would like it to be. That's why the independent Fed is so important, so they can manage the money supply, manage the economy, so we can bring inflation down to below 2%, that target number.
You know, there hasn't really been a focus on Democrats for quite some time. Obviously, the president won the election. Last go around, Republicans run this town. But now tonight there's going to be a focus on Democrats as well in the form of Abigail Spanberger. She is the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, first woman to be elected governor. She will be giving the rebuttal. Here's what I'm seeing right now in your party. Democrats' view of your own party. Only 7 in 10 congressmen have a positive view of the Democratic Party. And then when it comes to issues, the Wall Street Journal recently had a poll showing that basically Americans trust Democrats on health care, but still all the other issues go to Republicans. What does Abigail Spanberger need to do tonight and say tonight, given those numbers?
Well, I think Abigail Spanberger, just elected moderate in Virginia. We have Mikey Sherrill, moderate elected in New Jersey. She's going to talk about how we focus on what the American people care and are talking about, and that's the cost of living. It's too expensive. Groceries are too expensive. It's hard to buy a house. It's almost impossible for millions of Americans to get health insurance to pay for their health care. We need to focus on making life easier for Americans. That's what Abigail will talk about. I chair the New Democrat Coalition. We just rolled out our affordability agenda, focused on groceries, on housing, on health care, on utilities, and basically family care, child care, and elder care.
So can we put those numbers back up on the screen? How do you square this then for me, Congressman? Because here are the numbers. Throw the poll back up. How do you square all of that? a year into the presidency here and Republicans running Washington?
Well, I think you'll see polls that cover the spectrum and go both ways. What I know is the Americans feel that the cost of living is too high, and they look to the Democrats to try to bring down those costs. That's what we're talking about. That's what the New Dems are focused on. I know on border security, since I came here, we have been focused on trying, many of us are working on trying to get a comprehensive immigration package that addresses safe and secure borders, making sure people who want to do us harm are kept out, people who are in the country who shouldn't be are shown the door. But we need an immigration policy that welcomes those who are going to help us build and grow our economy. That's how we've grown our economy all these years. If you look on issue, the president is underwater, and Democrats have to present a plan like what we're doing with the New Democrat Coalition that will give people confidence that we know how to lower costs, how to make sure folks live in healthy and safe neighborhoods, and that we have a strong national security, national defense. That's the New Dem platform.
Well, and we'll see potentially some of that from the governor tonight. Brad Schneider, thank you, sir. Thank you for jumping on with us.
Good to be with you.
Appreciate it. Other side of the aisle now, come on in. Ron Johnson, of course, the Republican senator from the great state of Wisconsin. Actually, Congressman Schneider's district borders Wisconsin, and then you go just across the border there, or the state line there, and you get into Ron Johnson's backyard. Senator, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. What do you want to hear out of President Trump tonight from your side of the aisle?
Thanks for having me on. Well, first of all, I'd like some honesty out of Democrats. I just listened to your previous guest saying the Democrats want a secure border. I mean, what a joke. So what President Trump has to do is he's got to describe the enormous messes really dropped in his lap by the Democrats. And, you know, rather than help clean up their messes, instead, for example, the open border, where we allowed millions of people to flood in here, 650,000 convicted criminals, 15 murderers, 15,000 murderers, 20,000 rapists. But rather than help us clean up that mess, what Democrats are doing is they're training activists to obstruct justice. They're encouraging their supporters to put themselves into harm's way, knowing people are going to get hurt. 2 people got killed, so they get their martyrs. Then they exploit their martyrs. So again, Democrats, I mean, it was really galling to listen to your previous guest, even though I just caught a couple minutes of it. But we need honesty. And President Trump has enormous challenges facing him, the wars, the devaluation of the currency from 40-year high inflation. It takes time to sort this out. I hope President Trump points that out.
Do you want the president to continue to talk about immigration? Polling shows he's underwater, that they like what they did, that Americans like what he did on the border, but do not like how he carried out the policies with ICE and deportations. So do you want him talking about that, or do you want him focusing on other issues?
Well, no, obviously we have to focus on what we can do to make things more affordable. But you've got to lay out the problem here. Again, you don't take a currency that's devalued. A dollar you held at the start of the pandemic is about worth 80 cents because of 40-year high inflation. So you have to explain that to people and why it takes time. He's got to celebrate the success of securing the border. He has to celebrate the success by actually utilizing our energy resources. We're bringing down energy costs by having a more rational policy toward, for example, H1N1. We can bring down the price of eggs. So there are things he can do. But he also explained what is not possible, which is just turning around the situation where you've devalued the currency by 20%.
You talk about the currency. Let me ask you about taxes, because the President Trump, the White House today is saying that one of the things that the president is going to be pushing for tonight is a new tax cut, both for corporations and for Americans, for you know, average citizens. I know you, Senator, you come on the show often and you talk about our national debt. It's now close to $39 trillion and climbing. Do you believe now is the time to push for more tax cuts, as President Trump could potentially outline this evening, at least call for and ask from your side of the aisle?
Well, one success we should celebrate is the fact we avoided a massive automatic tax increase to the tune of $3 or $4 trillion over the next 10 years. So that's a real success. We made a lot of the parts that are very incentivizing for businesses permanent in the tax code. Those are successes. What I'd prefer he talk about is how we lower the deficit by returning to a reasonable pre-pandemic level of spending. And I put forward a number of different proposals. I mean, the latest numbers are that we are going to spend close to $600 billion more this year than we spent in 2019, plus up for inflation and population. $600 billion more. That's a $6 trillion
for as long as the eye can see.
If we could return to a reasonable... So again, we need to return to a reasonable pre-pandemic level spending. Again, we can save even more if you go back to Clinton in 1998 or Obama in 2014. But just going back to 2019 pre-pandemic, we can save $600 billion per year just returning to the levels we were, plus up for inflation population. And that wouldn't even impact Social Security, Medicare, or interest. So there's a way of doing it reasonably. You got to use those basic controls.
Yeah, by the way, when President Bill Clinton gave his State of the Union address back in the late 90s here on a night like this, he was talking about a government surplus in the area of $80 billion. What a difference times make about 27 years later. Senator Ron Johnson, I got to run. I do appreciate you running to the camera for us tonight. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you, sir. All right, still to come as our coverage continues here on the Hill and on News Nation. So look at, what side am I? Yeah, right there. Beautiful building, gorgeous night. It is your house. It's your building. It's your government. But chances are you've never been here or you haven't been here in a while, right? So what is it actually like inside the halls of Congress? I'm going to take you there live on the other side of the break. Plus, the panel tells me two things the president has to say tonight in order for his speech to be a success. That's Bill Salmon, Ronna McDaniel later in the show. The walk through the halls when you return. All right, welcome back. So I just wanted to give you a look real quick of kind of what the halls of Congress look like. Maybe you've been to the Capitol or seen it, but this is actually what part of this massive facility looks like. This guy knows it better than anyone. Joe Kay, brother? Hey, how are you? So I wanted to bring Joe Kay in because you're here every day?
Yeah, this is my neighborhood.
This is your neighborhood. So this literally like one of the halls here. So this is Congressman, Mario Diaz-Balart. Frank, let's show this real quick. So the congressman is from Florida, and outside of offices, you'll see something from their home. This is the $50 million reward for Nicolas Maduro, and these members of Congress like to sort of display what's going on.
Yeah, it's usually something that fits the theme of their office, something they've advocated for. And yeah, as you say, people don't realize the Capitol is actually 7 different buildings connected underground.
It's like a city.
Yeah.
It's like its own city.
It is. It really is. And this is the opportunity they have to sort of display that kind of stuff, their personal offices. So this is what you're seeing now.
So this is Richie Neal, Massachusetts. So we just showed you a Republican. We just showed you a Democrat.
Yep. And they actually, fun fact, they get to keep their offices if they're seniors, and if they're new, there's a big lottery. So it's a big deal actually where they end up.
Right.
But, this is a nice hallway.
Frank, come this way. Let's let him get ahead of us here. Okay, so here's what I want to show some folks because I noticed this, Joe, and we're just going to get to it here in a second. This building is obviously beautiful. It's historical. It's massive, as I talked to. Do you know how to get around this building?
It took me a full 2 years to not get lost. And some days, if I'm tired, I still do.
Yeah, I have no clue how to get around here. So this is what I wanted to show. This is the U.S. mailing system that I guess was in place at one point in time. Does this thing still work?
I don't think it does. I don't think they send mail through, but you see a lot of these kinds of things because the building is so old. What I love is if there is a president who started in Congress, their office is usually marked off as well. So on the Senate side, you see a lot of that, but it's very cool for those walking through.
Joe Kay, big night for you, sir. Yeah, thank you, brother. Likewise. Appreciate it. So we're actually broadcasting live over here. This is where you see TV folk do their thing on a day in and day out basis. It's not normally this crowded, obviously, but it is beautiful. Actually, Frank, come with me here for a second. Can you show people? This is the Cannon Rotunda. Like when you are inside this building, you look up and there's so many different scenes like this that make you feel and let you know and make you realize, my gosh, this is the United States Capitol. So just wanted to give you a little bit of the feel. If you've never been here, it's just one of many avenues in this building. Our State of the Union address coverage continues here on News Nation. Other side of the break, Ronna McDaniel, Bill Salmon join me once again. the big night for the president. He's at the White House right now working on the final touches. He'll make his way here soon. What he needs to do and what we expect him to say, what he also told myself and some other anchors earlier today on the other side of the break.
We have a country that's now doing well. It's going to be a long speech because we have so much to talk about.
2 hours from now, President Trump will give his State of the Union address, focusing on key agenda items like the economy, most likely immigration as well, beyond the border. What he happens to say about foreign affairs will be closely watched. The speech also just might set the tone for Republicans' messaging ahead of this year's midterm elections. With me now to close out the hour here, Ronna McDaniel, former Republican National Committee Chair, and Bill Salmon, Senior Vice President of Editorial Content for The Hill and News Nation. Hello to you both again. Welcome back. We started with you. We end with you. You just made an interesting point to me, Ronna, in the commercial break, and let's start here. The Team USA hockey team, men's team, is going to be here tonight at the State of the Union address. And you said to me that you think Trump should mention that early. Why?
Because young men were a big part of propelling him to victory in 2024. He went on all these podcasts, he engaged them. Get them early because they're going to change the channel, right? Everybody's focused on the U.S. men's hockey team. And I'm going to say young women, too, because they love the U.S. men's hockey team as well. So I think getting them out of the way early, acknowledging them is going to be good to bring that viewership in as he's heading into the midterms and bring that young male audience back for this election.
He would be guilty of political malpractice if he did not skillfully exploit this, as any good politician should.
Correct.
You got the guy with the missing teeth, and everybody loves him. You know, and
This
Trump's
was
a
the
showman.
scene, this was the scene in the Oval earlier
Trump
today.
is a showman, and this is in his wheelhouse. So yeah,
and
he's
the gold
got
medal.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
it's
got to
brought
do
our whole
it.
country together.
You got to do it.
And by the way, how do you not stand for that? So you put the Democrats right on notice. How does everybody not cheer for us beating Canada and winning the gold medal?
By the way, they could probably walk in today with those pants and sweatshirt, no suit and tie. No one would care.
No.
No one would care. Just put the gold medal around.
I bet they will walk in like that. Maybe not.
Maybe,
I don't
maybe.
know. And I think the teeth are still missing for Jack Hughes. But
Then I know the one attire that there will be, which will be for the Supreme Court justices.
Right.
Yeah.
They will be in their robes. The question is, who shows up when Donald Trump walks by them? What does he do? And how does he handle this situation, given the ruling that went against him just a handful of days ago, a few days ago?
I mean, I think he addresses it, don't you? I don't think he does it when he walks by him, but somewhere in the speech when he brings up tariffs, he may do a joke or something.
I think he will, too. I think he'll stop short of calling people out by name and talking about how their family should be ashamed of them, which he did earlier. I think at this point, also, you got to remember that he sort of took the blow, which was a big setback on the tariffs, and then said, you know what, I'm going to kind of do an end around, and I'm going to do it my own way. You prevent me from doing tariffs under this particular way of doing it, but there's another way I could do it, and I'm going to go impose them anyway. So in a way, he's almost moved past the Supreme Court justices, and I wouldn't expect him to spend too much time calling them out directly.
Should he lean into tariffs tonight, given where his party is heading into the midterms?
I don't think I don't think that's the winning play. Look, you got to remember what is the goal here? What is the thing here? This is a State of the Union. You get to do two things. One, you start out by bragging on what you've accomplished, right? You do the border. We've got inflation down a little bit better. We've got the big beautiful bill, which is the tax cut extensions. But then it's like, what have you done for me lately?
Right.
What am I going to do for you? And that's where you get into, well, I'm going to do some more tax cuts. I'm going to do this thing with the AI where your electric bill isn't going to be that bad.
For it, not
So
you.
he's got to get those fundamental building blocks. And if he wants to start spiking the football on tariffs, I don't think that's going to be particularly useful.
I think he will hit the tariffs, but I think there's a way to bridge that with American manufacturing and buy American.
Manufacturing is down. Manufacturing jobs are in the
But
negative.
in Michigan, I will just tell you, Michigan auto workers are happy that Trump is saying we need to buy American cars. And they view this as something that's important to bring jobs back to Michigan, as they've seen plant after plant be built in Mexico. So they think this is important. I've done focus groups. Okay. There are people that really feel strongly that Trump's trying to help American manufacturing, and they think the tariffs is the right way. So if he bridges it with the American worker, I think that's the right way to tell that story.
Here's the challenge for him, though, tonight, when you look at approval on the issues. Inflation, 32%. Tariffs, 34%, diplomacy, 35%. And you only get into the 40s with immigration at 40, the economy at 41, and then the big one, of course, is the southern border at 47. So how does, with that as the backdrop, I mean, those are all, there you go. With that as the backdrop, how does he attack tonight? Because you'd love to see at least one or two of those in the 50s or above.
Well, I mean, you know, first of all, he's up against the age-old dilemma of these presidents, which is vibes versus data, right? I mean, I'm old enough to, well, Joe Biden had the problem too, with the, you know, was the economy, you know, actually doing well when you look at the indicators versus the anecdotal evidence that, well, but tell that to the guy who can't feed his family properly or whatever. I'll go back to George H.W. Bush ran into this when he went for re-election. We were technically out of a recession, and the numbers were starting to look good, but he kept running up against, well, the vibes are, and then, you know, it's hard to compete against that. So one of the things Trump is going to have to do is to punch through and say, I'm taking control of this narrative. The economy actually is starting to shape up.
I got 20 seconds.
I think he's right. I also think the president's going to unveil new tax cuts. He's going to talk about the no tax on tips, the no tax on overtimes. He's going to tell stories, and he's going to take the narrative and hand it over to Republicans for the midterms.
Rana, Bill, thank you so much. We should also mention, by the way, Abigail Spanberger, the governor of Virginia, going to give the Democrats rebuttal after all of what President Trump has to say. I hope you stay with us tonight. President Trump's State of the Union address and our coverage here on News Nation continues. I'm Blake Burman. Our Elizabeth Vargas takes the reins from here. I thank you for watching.